You can earn $90,000 a year and still feel dead broke. Or you can bring home that exact same $90,000 and feel completely unshakable. Identical paycheck, two opposite experiences. The gap comes down to a single figure almost nobody can actually name. Picture Marcus and Derek. Same job, same employer, same $90,000 salary hitting their account on the same Friday. Same gas station coffee on the way to work. If you line them up side by side, you'd never spot a difference. Then, in the same week, both of their cars break down. Same mechanic shop, same $1,400 repair bill for each of them. Marcus taps his card and goes right back to scrolling his phone. Doesn't even blink. Derek reads the estimate 3 separate times, feels his stomach sink, then opens his banking app trying to figure out which bill he can shove off until next month. Same income, same exact bill, two completely different reactions. What separates Marcus from Derek isn't discipline. It isn't luck. And it's definitely not the paycheck. It's a number neither of them ever brings up: net worth. There are 3 specific points on that number line where life quietly stops feeling like a hamster wheel and starts feeling like something else entirely. I'm Root, and I've spent an embarrassing number of hours figuring out why 2 people earning the exact same paycheck can be living in 2 completely different realities. If you've ever felt like you're grinding hard yet somehow not moving forward, do me a favor and subscribe, because today we're charting the 3 net worth levels where your whole relationship with money flips. And fair warning, the 3rd level does something to people that almost nobody sees coming. Plenty of people reach it and remain miserable anyway, and the research finally explains why. We'll get there. But the first level is a lot closer than you'd guess. So let's start from the ground floor. Here's the frame that makes everything click. We fixate on income. How much do you pull in? What's your salary? Did you get a raise? But income is just water running through your fingers. Net worth is whatever's left sitting in the bucket once that water passes through. And it turns out there are 3 lines etched into that bucket. 3 thresholds where, once you cross them, the water starts behaving in a totally different way. Marcus had already crossed the first line. Derek hadn't. That's the entire story behind the car repair. Level 1, $100,000. Call it escape velocity. I know for some of you that figure feels impossibly out of reach, and for others it sounds almost insultingly tiny. Stick with me, because this is the single most important threshold in this whole video, and the math underneath it is genuinely gorgeous. Charlie Mayer, Warren Buffett's late business partner, a man worth billions, was once asked how to build wealth, and his answer has been repeated endlessly for good reason. Cleaning it up a bit for YouTube, he basically said the first $100,000 is brutal, but you've got to do it. He didn't care what it took. Find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas pedal a little. So why would a billionaire obsess over a number that was pocket change to him? Because that first $100,000 is the only stretch of the entire journey where you're doing almost all the heavy lifting yourself. Let me walk you through it, because this is where it gets interesting. Say you're setting aside $10,000 a year and earning a 7% return. Going from zero to your first $100,000 takes roughly 7 to 8 years. During those years, the market is barely lifting a finger to help you. Nearly every dollar sitting in that account is a dollar you personally earned, saved, and refused to spend. It's a grind. It feels slow because it genuinely is slow. But now watch what happens next. Climbing from $100,000 to $200,000 doesn't take another 8 years. It takes roughly 5. Going from $200,000 to $300,000 takes under 4 years. And here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Going from $500,000 all the way to a full million takes about the same amount of time it took you to scrape together that very first $100,000. Except now you're building 10 times the wealth in that identical stretch of time. Same effort, same patience, wildly different results. Why? Because somewhere along the way, your money quietly punched in for its very first day on the job. At $100,000 invested at 7%, your portfolio kicks off roughly $7,000 a year completely on its own. That's almost a full maxed out IRA contribution earned by your money while you were asleep. You spent 8 years shoving the snowball uphill, and at 100 grand it finally crests the summit and starts rolling downhill under its own power. But here's the part almost nobody mentions. The real magic of that 100 grand isn't even the math. It's what it does to your brain. There's a study I think about constantly. Researchers set up in a mall in New Jersey and pulled in everyday shoppers. They asked everyone to picture a car repair, the exact scenario Marcus and Derek just lived through. Half the group imagined a repair that cost $150. The other half imagined one that cost $1,500. Then everybody took a standard cognitive test, the kind that measures raw problem-solving ability. Among wealthier shoppers, there was zero difference between the two groups. But among lower-income shoppers, the ones who pictured the $1,500 repair scored dramatically worse, nearly a full standard deviation lower. Same people, same brains. The only variable that changed was 30 seconds spent worrying about money they didn't have. The way the researchers themselves described that effect is the part that sticks with me. They said it's comparable to losing an entire night of sleep. So imagine walking through your whole life, every decision, every conversation, every moment with your kids, every shot at a promotion, permanently a little sleep deprived. Not from exhaustion, but because part of your mind is constantly running a background calculation about whether you could survive an emergency. That's Derek standing in that parking lot. His brain isn't worse than Marcus's. It's simply overloaded. And this isn't some rare situation. The Federal Reserve recently found that nearly 30% of American adults couldn't handle a surprise $500 expense using cash or savings, and roughly 30% couldn't cover 3 months of expenses by any method whatsoever. That's not a discipline issue. That's a cushion issue. $100,000 buys you out of that. Not a yacht, just quiet. Just a brain that isn't constantly humming with low-grade financial static. That's why it's level 1. It's not really about getting rich. It's about getting your mind back. Quick honesty check before we climb to the next level, and be straight with yourself here, because the next 2 levels only matter once you've nailed this first one. Are you below this line, sitting right on it, or already past it? Hold on to that answer, because it'll change how you hear everything coming next. Level 2, $500,000 to $1 million. This is when your money lands a job of its own. Okay, so you've hit escape velocity. The static in your head is gone. Now what? Now you step into the strangest, most psychologically fascinating stretch of the entire journey, the climb from $500,000 to a full million. And the reason it's strange is that for the first time, the hardest working member of your household might not actually be a person. Let's return to the math, because it tells the whole story. At $500,000 invested, a 7% return generates roughly $35,000 a year. Sit with that for a second. $35,000 appearing annually, produced entirely by money you already had sitting there. For context, that's roughly what the typical American earns from a full-time job. Your portfolio is now bringing in a respectable second income, and it never calls in sick, never asks for a raise, and never dreads Mondays. And at a full $1 million, that same 7% throws off about $70,000 a year, which is more than what the typical American individual earns annually. Read that again. At $1 million invested, your money out-earns a full-time salary, and it does it while you're sleeping, while you're on vacation, while you're doing literally anything else. This is the level where the phrase work optional stops being some fantasy you see on a beach in an influencer's ad and starts becoming something you can genuinely see on the horizon. You're not there yet, but you can see it, and seeing it changes how you carry yourself. Here's how level 2 actually feels in real life. It's the meeting where your boss says something genuinely unreasonable, and instead of just swallowing it, you realize, almost surprising yourself, that you could actually walk away. You won't today, but you could. That single internal shift, knowing you genuinely have a choice, quietly reshapes how you negotiate, what you tolerate, and how much of your self-respect you're willing to trade for a paycheck. It also shows up in smaller, nearly invisible ways. It's not checking the price tag on every item before it goes in the cart. It's booking the direct flight instead of the one with 2 layovers just to save $60. It's the dishwasher breaking down, and the entire crisis lasting about 4 minutes. You search for a replacement, you buy it, and it's over. None of these are extravagant luxuries. They're just friction quietly being removed from your week, one decision at a time. And the strange part is most people at this stage don't even notice it happening. They just slowly stop bracing for impact. Now, real talk, this level is genuinely rare. Roughly 21% of American households are millionaires, and the threshold for the top 10% of all American households by net worth now sits closer to $2.4 million. So if you cross $1 million, you're not just doing fine, you're sitting in the top fifth of the entire country. The problem is it rarely feels that way, and there's a reason for that, which brings us to the trap hiding inside level 2. The trap is called lifestyle inflation, and it is the silent killer of this entire stage. Every time your income climbs, there's a gravitational pull dragging your spending up right behind it. Researchers have a name for this, the hedonic treadmill. You get the raise, you get the nicer car, and within about a year, that nicer car just feels like your car. The thrill fades away, but the payment sticks around. So you upgrade again, chasing a high that keeps resetting to zero. This is exactly how people pulling in $300,000 a year still end up broke. Their money never gets the chance to take on that second job, because every dollar gets drafted into a bigger mortgage, a leased luxury SUV, and a lifestyle that quietly devours the future to feed the present. Level 2 isn't really about earning more. It's about having the nerve to let the gap between what you make and what you spend stay open long enough for compounding to walk through it. So notice the pattern that's forming here. Level 1 didn't add a luxury, it subtracted a fear, the fear of an emergency. Level 2 subtracts a different fear, the fear of being trapped under a single employer. Each level you climb isn't really about piling stuff onto your life. It's about stripping fears out of it. Keep that in mind, because level 3 removes the biggest fear of them all, and it's the one almost nobody is prepared for. Level 3, $2.5 million to $5 million. Buying back your time. There's a scene in a movie called The Gambler where a character who is permanently finished doing things he doesn't want to do lays out his entire philosophy of money. He says the goal isn't to be rich. The goal is to hit a specific number, tuck it somewhere safe, and arrive at what he crudely calls walk-away money, a position where no person, no boss, no bank can force you to do anything you don't want to do. His number was $2.5 million. And here's the wild part, that wasn't just movie dialogue. That number is almost mathematically perfect, and it's built on one of the most thoroughly tested ideas in all of personal finance. It's called the 4% rule, and it comes from a study where researchers tested decades of market history to answer one question: how much can you withdraw from a portfolio every year without ever running out of money? The answer they kept landing on was roughly 4%, which hands us a beautifully simple shortcut. Whatever you spend in a year, multiply it by 25. That's your number, the point where your investments can fund your life essentially forever. So let's run it. If your life costs $40,000 a year, your number is $1 million. If you spend $80,000, it's $2 million. And if you want to live on $100,000 a year without ever working another day, you need roughly $2.5 million. Sound familiar? That's the exact number from that movie. The screenwriter clearly did the math. Push it to $5 million, and you can support a $175,000 to $200,000 lifestyle purely off the returns. And at that point, you're sitting in the top 4% of all American households. Out of roughly 135 million households in this country, only about 5.5 million have $5 million or more. This is genuinely rarefied air. And I'll be honest with you, this is the level where I see people get it most wrong, because the math finally works, and they assume the meaning shows up automatically. It doesn't. They think level 3 is about stuff, the mansion, the boat, the watch that costs more than most people's cars. It's not. Because by the time you reach this level, the research says something almost cruel is waiting for a lot of people. Here's the uncomfortable truth about money and happiness. For years, the famous study everyone quoted claimed that happiness flatlines once you hit about $100,000 a year, that past that point, more money simply stops moving the needle. Then a researcher named Matthew Killingsworth came along, tracked over 1 million real-time mood reports from thousands of people, and found that claim wasn't true at all. Happiness kept climbing right alongside income with no ceiling in sight. So who was right? Here's the answer I promised you at the start, and it's the most useful idea in this entire video. The two camps actually sat down together and worked it out. For most people, roughly 80% who are already reasonably content, more money genuinely does keep buying more happiness all the way up. But for the unhappy 20%, money relieves their suffering up to about $100,000 a year, and then it simply stops, because their unhappiness was never really about money to begin with. And no amount of net worth can buy you out of a problem that money didn't cause in the first place. That's the secret tucked inside level 3. The people who reach this point and stay miserable are the ones who believe the number itself was the destination. The people who get here and finally feel different are the ones who use that number to purchase the one thing money can actually buy that truly matters: control over their own time. Waking up without an alarm. Saying yes to the people you love and no to the work you despise. Being present for the moments you used to miss. Level 1 bought back a quiet mind. Level 2 bought back options. Level 3 buys back your one finite, non-renewable resource, the actual hours of your life, reclaimed from anyone who used to own them. That's the entire game. That's what's truly waiting on the other side of that number. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, "Root, I'm not even at level 1 yet, this is depressing," stop right there. I need you to hear this clearly. The fact that these levels are rare isn't a reason to feel behind. It's the entire reason they're worth chasing. Nearly a third of this country can't cover 3 months of expenses. The bar for feeling genuinely different isn't infinite wealth. It's a cushion, then a choice, then your time back. That's it. And the most encouraging part is the part we started with. The hardest, slowest, most thankless stretch of this entire journey is the climb to that first 100 grand, the stretch where it's all on you and the market is barely lifting a finger. Almost everyone who gives up quits right there in the grind, right before the snowball crests the hill. If you can just outlast the boring part, the math stops fighting you and starts working in your favor. You don't need to get smarter. You just need to get stubborn. Quick aside, then I'll get right back to it. Everything I just did in this video, taking a dry Federal Reserve statistic and turning it into the mall study, the snowball, the movie scene, that's not luck or talent. It's a repeatable process, and it's the exact thing I teach inside a community I built for people who want to research, write, and grow a faceless YouTube channel in spaces like personal finance. If a project like that has ever crossed your mind, the links are in the description. No pressure at all. It'll be there whenever you're ready. Now, back to your money. Here's the reframe I want to leave you with. We've been trained to measure ourselves by income, the number on the paycheck, the title in the email signature, the salary you'd admit to at a dinner party. But income is just the speed of the water. Net worth is the size of the bucket. Marcus and Derek are two guys with identical $90,000 salaries and completely different lives in that parking lot. The only thing that ever separated them was which line in the bucket they'd quietly crossed. Marcus wasn't richer on payday. He was simply further along the number line. That's it. That's the entire difference. You don't reach level 3 by accident, and you don't reach level 1 overnight. But you get there one boring, unglamorous, automated contribution at a time. So pick your level, not the fantasy one, the next one, the one that's actually within reach from wherever you're standing today. Because 10 years from now, that money is either going to be quietly working for you the way it works for Marcus, or you're going to be working around the lack of it the way Derek does. And I know exactly which version of that parking lot moment I'd rather be living. One last thing, and it's the only boring sentence in here. I'm not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice. It's just patterns I've watched play out with real numbers attached. Take what's useful and leave the rest. If this changed how you think about the number in your account, do me a favor and drop a comment telling me which level you're climbing toward right now. I actually read them. And if you want the other half of this picture, the exact moves that get you across that first line the fastest, I made a full video on it, and it's right there on the screen. Go watch that one next. I'll see you in it.